You know how they say a good deed always comes back to you? Sometimes it comes back in ways you could never imagine. Martin Svoboda was an ordinary mechanic. He worked in a small repair shop, hands covered in oil, his back aching, money barely enough. One evening, he was driving home on an old country road. He saw a woman standing by a broken-down car. He stopped, helped her, drove her into the city. She was kind, calm, a little tired. They talked together, laughed. It was a pleasant evening. He had no idea he had just given a ride to Eva Novakova. She was the boss of the entire company where Martin worked. That ride created something special between them. Before we return to the story, write in the comments where you work. And if this story touched you, please give it a like and subscribe, because tomorrow I have something really special prepared for you. You know how they say a good deed always comes back to you? Sometimes it comes back in ways you could never imagine. Martin Svoboda was an ordinary mechanic. He worked in a small repair shop, hands covered in oil, his back aching, money barely enough. One evening he was driving home on an old country road. He saw a woman standing by a broken-down car. He stopped, helped her, drove her into the city. She was kind, calm, a little tired. They talked together, laughed. It was a pleasant evening. He had no idea he had just given a ride to Eva Novakova. She was the boss of the entire company where Martin worked. That ride created something special between them. Before we return to the story, write in the comments where you work. And if this story touched you, please give it a like and subscribe, because tomorrow I have something really special prepared for you. Martin Svoboda woke up that morning the same way he had woken up for the past 7 years. The alarm clock buzzed at 5:30 in the morning, a harsh sound that pulled him from dreams he could never quite remember. He reached over and slapped the button with a calloused hand, the same hand that had turned wrenches and tightened bolts since he was 18 years old. Now he was 32, and sometimes it felt like those 14 years had passed in the blink of an eye. And sometimes it felt like he had been doing this forever. The small apartment was quiet except for the hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen. Martin sat up slowly, his back protesting the movement. He had pulled something yesterday while lifting an engine block. Nothing serious, just another reminder that his body was not as young as it used to be. He shuffled to the bathroom, splashed cold water on his face, and looked at himself in the mirror. Dark hair that needed cutting, a face that was starting to show lines around the eyes, a jaw that needed shaving. He looked tired, he thought. But then again, he always looked tired these days. The apartment was modest, just 2 rooms in an old building on the outskirts of Prague. Martin had lived here since he moved to the city, chasing the promise of steady work and a better life than the small village where he grew up could offer. His parents still lived there, his father working the same small farm that had been in the family for generations, his mother tending to the house and the garden. They called him once a week, always asking when he would come visit, always telling him they missed him. He missed them too, but the visits were few and far between. The drive was 3 hours each way, and he rarely had a day off that did not leave him too exhausted to make the journey. Martin dressed in his work clothes, dark blue pants and a matching shirt with his name stitched over the pocket. The fabric was worn soft from countless washings, and there were stains that would never come out, no matter how much detergent his landlady used. He did not mind. These were honest stains, the marks of honest work. He made himself a simple breakfast, bread with butter and jam, a cup of strong coffee that was more bitter than he liked, but did the job of waking him up. As he ate, he looked out the window at the street below. It was still dark outside, the streetlights casting yellow pools on the empty sidewalk. In a few hours, the street would be busy with people heading to work, children walking to school, delivery trucks making their rounds. But for now, it was peaceful, almost serene. This was his favorite time of day, these quiet moments before the world woke up and demanded his attention. He finished his breakfast, rinsed his cup in the sink, and grabbed his jacket from the hook by the door. The jacket was old, the leather cracked and faded, but it had been his father's once, and Martin wore it like a talisman. It smelled faintly of motor oil and cigarette smoke, though Martin did not smoke. The smell just seemed to cling to everything in his life. He locked the door behind him and walked down the 3 flights of stairs to the street. His car was parked at the curb, a battered old sedan that was held together more by willpower than engineering. It was 15 years old, the paint faded to a dull grey, the passenger side mirror held on with duct tape. But it ran, and that was all that mattered. Martin had fixed it himself more times than he could count, replacing parts, scavenged from junkyards, nursing it along like a sick relative. The engine turned over on the second try, coughing to life with a sound that made him wince. He made a mental note to check the starter motor this weekend, if he had time. He pulled out into the empty street and began the 20-minute drive to the repair shop where he worked. The city was just beginning to stir, lights coming on in windows, the first trams rattling down their tracks. Martin drove on autopilot, his mind elsewhere, thinking about the day ahead, the cars that would need fixing, the customers who would complain about the cost, the boss who would complain about the time he took. It was always the same, a rhythm he had fallen into so completely that he barely noticed it anymore. The repair shop was called Novacek Automotive, a name that had been painted on the side of the building in big red letters that were now faded and peeling. It was a large operation, 3 bays for repairs, a parts department, a small office where the boss worked. The building itself was old, a former warehouse that had been converted decades ago, with high ceilings and concrete floors that were always cold, even in summer. Martin pulled into the employee parking lot at the back and killed the engine. He sat for a moment, gathering himself for the day ahead. Through the chain-link fence, he could see the lights on inside the shop, could hear the faint sound of a radio playing. Someone was already there, probably Thomas, who was always early, or maybe Jiri, who sometimes slept in his car if he had been drinking the night before. Martin climbed out of his car and walked to the back entrance. The door was unlocked, and he pushed it open, stepping into the familiar smell of grease and solvent and hot metal. The shop was a cavern of tools and equipment, hydraulic lifts and rolling toolboxes and parts bins stacked to the ceiling. It was organized chaos, everything in its place, but only if you knew where to look. Martin had worked here for 7 years, and he knew every inch of this place, could find any tool in the dark if he had to. Thomas was indeed already there, bent over the open hood of a delivery van, his hands buried in the engine compartment. He looked up when Martin walked in, nodded a greeting. Thomas was 50, a broad-shouldered man with a grey beard and hands like slabs of meat. He had been working on cars since before Martin was born, and there was not much he had not seen. He was a good man, quiet and steady, the kind of person you wanted next to you when a job went sideways. "Good morning," Martin said. Thomas grunted in response, which was about as talkative as he got before 8 in the morning. Martin walked to his own bay, the middle one of the 3, and started setting up for the day. He pulled on a pair of work gloves that were so worn they were more holes than fabric, and began checking the schedule taped to the wall. 3 cars today, an oil change and inspection on a sedan, a brake job on a truck, and a diagnostic on a hatchback that had been stalling out. Routine work, nothing exciting, but steady. The boss arrived at 7, as he always did. His name was Karel Novacek, and he was the son of the man who had founded the shop 40 years ago. Karel was in his mid-50s, a thin man with thinning hair and wire-rimmed glasses that were always sliding down his nose. He was not a mechanic himself, had never gotten his hands dirty with engine work, but he knew the business side of things, knew how to keep the books balanced and the customers happy. He was fair, mostly, paid on time, did not ask for more than was reasonable. Martin respected him, even if they were not exactly friends. Karel walked through the shop, coffee cup in hand, saying good morning to each of the mechanics. When he reached Martin, he stopped, looked at the schedule. "You have the Kovar-Arik truck today," he said. "Brakes are shot, needs new rotors too. Should be straightforward." Martin nodded. "I will get on it after the oil change." Karel nodded, took a sip of his coffee. "How is your back?" he asked. "You were limping yesterday." Martin shrugged. "It is fine, just pulled something. Nothing serious." Karel looked skeptical but did not press. "Just take it easy," he said. "I cannot afford to have you out sick." Martin appreciated the concern, even if it was mostly about keeping the shop running. Karel moved on to check on Thomas, and Martin turned his attention to the first car of the day. The work was meditative in its way, the repetition of familiar tasks, the problem-solving when something did not go as expected. Martin lost himself in it, the hours passing without him really noticing. He changed oil, replaced brake pads, traced electrical faults with a multimeter. His hands moved with practiced efficiency, tightening bolts to the correct torque, routing hoses so they would not chafe, cleaning up after himself as he went. By noon, he had finished 2 of the 3 cars and was starting on the diagnostic. The morning shift had been busy, the shop filled with the sounds of work, tools clanging, air wrenches buzzing, the radio playing classic rock at a volume just loud enough to hear over the noise. Martin had barely looked up from his work, had barely spoken to anyone except to ask Thomas for a hand moving the truck. At 12:30, Karel called a lunch break. The mechanics gathered in the small break room at the front of the shop, a cramped space with a table, a few chairs, a microwave that only worked half the time. Martin had brought his lunch from home, a sandwich and an apple, and he ate quickly, listening to Thomas and Jiri argue about football. He did not have much to contribute to the conversation, did not follow sports that closely, but he liked the camaraderie, the sense of being part of something. After lunch, he went back to work on the diagnostic. The hatchback was a tricky one, stalling intermittently with no obvious pattern. Martin suspected a faulty sensor or maybe a problem with the fuel pump, but it would take time to track down. He hooked up the diagnostic computer, scrolled through the error codes, started testing circuits one by one. It was tedious work, but he did not mind. There was a satisfaction in solving these puzzles, in finding the one thing that was wrong and fixing it. By 4 in the afternoon, he had found the problem, a crankshaft position sensor that was failing. He called Karel over to approve the repair, and Karel nodded, told him to order the part and finish the job tomorrow. Martin logged the work in the computer, cleaned up his bay, and started putting away his tools. The day was winding down, the other mechanics finishing up their own jobs, the tool shop slowly quieting. At 5:30, Karel announced that it was time to close up. The mechanics began the process of shutting down the shop, turning off lights, locking up the tool cabinets, checking that all the bay doors were secure. Martin walked out to his car, his back aching more than it had that morning, his hands sore from gripping tools all day. He was tired, the kind of bone-deep tired that came from physical labor, but it was a good tired, the kind that came from a day of honest work. He climbed into his car, turned the key, and the engine coughed to life. He sat for a moment, letting the engine warm up, watching the other mechanics drive away. Then he put the car in gear and headed home, taking the back roads to avoid the worst of the traffic. The city was beautiful at this time of day, the late afternoon sun casting long shadows, the streets busy with people heading home from work. Martin drove slowly, in no particular hurry, letting his mind wander. He thought about what he would make for dinner. Probably something simple. Pasta, maybe, or fried eggs with bread. He thought about whether he should call his parents tonight, or wait until the weekend. He thought about the car he was driving, and whether the starter motor would last another month, or whether he would be stranded somewhere soon. These were the small concerns that filled his life, the mundane worries that occupied his thoughts. It was not a bad life, he told himself, just a quiet one, a simple one. He had a job, a place to live, enough money to get by. He was healthy, mostly, and he had people who cared about him, even if they were far away. It was not the life he had dreamed of when he was younger, when he had imagined himself doing something more, being someone more. But it was his life, and he had made peace with it. The road stretched out ahead of him, familiar and unchanging, and Martin Svoboda drove on, not knowing that everything was about to change. It happened on a Thursday evening, 3 weeks into October, when the days were getting shorter and the air had that crisp quality that promised winter was not far behind. Martin had stayed late at the shop, finishing up a transmission job that had taken longer than expected. By the time he cleaned up and locked his bay, it was almost 8:00, the sky already dark, the shop empty except for him. Karl had left hours ago, and Thomas and Jiri had clocked out at their usual time. Martin did not mind working late. The overtime pay was welcome, and there was something peaceful about the shop when it was quiet, when he could work without interruption. He climbed into his car, turned the key, and listened to the engine struggle before finally catching. He really needed to fix that starter, he thought, but there never seemed to be time. He pulled out of the parking lot and headed toward home, taking the old country road that cut through the fields outside the city. It was longer than the highway route, but he preferred it, especially at night when the traffic was light. The road was narrow and winding, lined with trees that formed a canopy overhead, their branches black against the darkening sky. His headlights cut through the darkness, illuminating the pavement ahead, the white lines that marked the edge of the road. He had been driving for about 20 minutes when he saw the car. It was pulled off to the side of the road, hazard lights blinking, the hood propped open. A woman stood beside it, her arms wrapped around herself against the cold, her face turned toward the sound of his approaching car. Martin slowed down, his mechanic's instinct kicking in automatically. He could tell just from the way the car sat that it was not going anywhere under its own power. He pulled over behind it, put his own hazard lights on, and climbed out. The woman turned to face him as he approached, and he could see she was younger than he had first thought, maybe late 30s, early 40s. She was dressed in a business suit, dark and professional, completely out of place on this empty country road. Her hair was pulled back in a neat bun, and even in the dim light, he could see she looked stressed, maybe a little scared. "Car trouble?" Martin asked, walking up to her. She nodded, relief flooding her face. Yes, it just died on me. I was driving and it started making a terrible noise, and then it just stopped. I pulled over, and now it will not start at all. Martin nodded, walked around to the front of the car, and looked under the hood. He pulled out his phone and turned on the flashlight, shining it into the engine compartment. It did not take long to spot the problem. "Your serpentine belt snapped," he said, pointing to the shredded remains of the belt hanging off the pulleys. "See here. Without that, your alternator and water pump are not working. The battery is probably dead now, too." The woman leaned over to look, though Martin doubted she understood what she was seeing. "Can you fix it?" she asked. "Not here, not without the right parts," he said. "You need a new belt, and the battery will need to be charged or replaced. I can tow it to my shop tomorrow, but right now you are stuck." The woman's face fell. She looked around at the empty road, the dark fields stretching away on either side. "I do not suppose there is a bus or taxi out here?" Martin shook his head. "Not at this time of night." "Where were you headed?" "Into Prague," she said. "I have been visiting a client outside the city, and I am trying to get back." Martin considered for a moment. He should probably just call a tow truck for her, give her the number of a taxi company, and be on his way. But something about the situation, about her standing there, alone on this dark road, made him hesitate. It was not right to leave someone stranded like this. "I can give you a ride," he offered. "I am heading into the city anyway. It is no trouble." The woman looked at him, and he could see her weighing the offer, trying to decide if she should trust this stranger who had appeared out of nowhere. Martin understood her hesitation. He was a stranger, and this was not exactly a safe situation for her. But after a moment, she seemed to make up her mind. "That would be very kind of you," she said. "Thank you. Are you sure it is not too much trouble?" "No trouble at all," Martin said. "Let me help you with your things." She retrieved a briefcase and a small overnight bag from the back seat of her car, and Martin carried them to his own vehicle. He opened the passenger door for her, waited until she was settled, then walked around to the driver's side. As he climbed in, he was suddenly very aware of the state of his car. The torn upholstery, the smell of oil and old coffee, the clutter on the dashboard. He felt a flash of embarrassment, but the woman did not seem to notice or care. She was busy fastening her seatbelt, settling her briefcase at her feet. Martin started the engine, pulled back onto the road, and they drove in silence for a few minutes. He glanced over at her once or twice, trying to think of something to say. She was looking out the window, her face unreadable in the dim light from the dashboard. "I am Martin, by the way," he said finally. "Martin Svoboda." "Eva," she replied, turning to look at him. "Eva Novakova. Thank you again for stopping. A lot of people would have just driven past." Martin shrugged. "I am a mechanic," he said. "I cannot just leave someone stranded with a broken car. It would go against everything I believe in." She smiled at that, a small smile, but genuine. "Where do you work?" she asked. "A shop in Prague," he said. "Novacek Automotive. We do general repairs, maintenance, that kind of thing." She nodded, seemed to consider this. "How long have you been a mechanic?" 7 years at this shop," Martin said. "But I have been working on cars since I was a teenager. My father taught me the basics, and I just kept learning from there. It is good work, honest work. You get to solve problems every day, fix things that are broken. There is satisfaction in that." "What about you?" he asked. "What do you do?" I work in business management, Ava said, which was vague enough that Martin did not press for details. I travel a lot, meet with clients, oversee operations. It keeps me busy. Too busy sometimes. Martin nodded. I can imagine. All those business suits and meetings and deadlines. It sounds stressful. It can be, she admitted. But it has its rewards, too. You get to build things, create opportunities for people, make a difference on a larger scale. Though sometimes I wonder if I have lost touch with the simpler things in life. Martin thought about that as he drove. He had never really considered what it would be like to work in an office, to wear a suit and tie every day, to deal with corporate politics and business strategies. It seemed like a different world from the one he inhabited, a world of grease and tools and physical labor. But maybe it was not so different after all. Maybe everyone was just trying to make their way, to find meaning in what they did. They talked as they drove, the conversation flowing more easily now. Eva asked him about his work, about the kinds of cars he fixed, about the most difficult repair he had ever done. Martin told her about the time he had rebuilt an engine from scratch, about the satisfaction of hearing it roar to life after weeks of painstaking work. He asked her about her travels, about the places she had been, and she told him about business trips to Germany and Austria, about hotels that all looked the same and meetings that blurred together. There was something comfortable about the conversation, Martin thought. Something easy and unforced. Eva was not what he had expected when he first saw her standing by the side of the road. She was smart and funny, with a quick wit and a way of listening that made him feel like what he said actually mattered. He found himself telling her things he rarely shared, about his parents and the farm, about his modest apartment and his old car that was always one breakdown away from the scrap yard. She listened without judgment, asked questions that showed genuine interest. The miles passed quickly, the dark countryside giving way to the outskirts of the city, streetlights and buildings rising up around them. Martin realized he was almost disappointed that the drive was ending. It had been a long time since he had talked to someone like this, really talked, not just made small conversation or discussed work. "Where should I drop you?" he asked as they entered the city proper. Eva gave him an address in one of the nicer neighborhoods, and Martin nodded, adjusted his route. He drove through the quiet streets, past apartment buildings and shops closed for the night, until he reached the address she had given. It was a modern building, glass and steel, with a doorman visible through the lobby windows. Martin pulled up to the curb and put the car in park. Eva turned to face him, and in the light from the street lamps, he could see her face clearly for the first time. She was beautiful, he realized, though it was not the kind of beauty that announced itself loudly. It was in the intelligence in her eyes, the kindness in her smile, the way she carried herself with quiet confidence. "Thank you, Martin," she said. "You really saved me tonight. I do not know what I would have done if you had not stopped." Martin felt his face warm. "It was nothing," he said. "Anyone would have done the same." "No," she said firmly. "Not anyone. You went out of your way to help a stranger, and that says something about who you are." She reached into her briefcase and pulled out a business card, handed it to him. "Call me about my car," she said. "Let me know what the repair will cost, and I will arrange to have it picked up. And please send me the bill for the tow as well." Martin took the card, glanced at it. It was simple, elegant, just her name and a phone number. He slipped it into his shirt pocket. "We'll call you tomorrow," he said. Eva gathered her things and opened the door, then paused. "You know," she said, "I think we should have coffee sometime." You have been so kind tonight, and I would like to return the favor. Maybe you could tell me more about those engine rebuilds." Martin blinked, surprised. "Sure," he said. "I would like that." She smiled, and it transformed her face, made her look younger, lighter. "Good," she said. "I will look forward to it." She climbed out of the car, retrieved her bags from the back seat, and walked to the building entrance. The doorman opened the door for her, and she disappeared inside without looking back. Martin sat there for a moment, staring at the building, trying to process what had just happened. Then he put the car in gear and drove away, heading toward his own neighborhood, his mind racing. He pulled the business card from his pocket at the next red light, looked at it again in the glow of the streetlight. Ava Novakova. The name felt familiar somehow, like he should know it, but he could not quite place it. He shrugged, tucked the card back in his pocket. He would figure it out tomorrow when he called her about the car. For now, he just wanted to get home, maybe have a beer, maybe sit by the window and think about the strange, unexpected encounter that had broken up his ordinary day. As he drove through the quiet streets, Martin found himself smiling. It had been a good evening, he thought. Sometimes the smallest acts of kindness led to the most unexpected connections. He had no idea how true that thought would turn out to be. Martin woke up the next morning with the memory of the previous evening still fresh in his mind. He lay in bed for a few extra minutes, staring at the ceiling, replaying the conversation with Eva. There had been something about her, something that had made the drive feel less like a favor and more like the beginning of something he could not quite name. He shook his head, pushing the thoughts away. She was just a client now, someone whose car he needed to fix. Nothing more. He went through his morning routine, showered, dressed, made his coffee. As he was eating breakfast, he pulled out Eva's business card and looked at it again. The name still nagged at him, familiar in a way he could not place. He decided he would call her once he got to the shop, arrange for the tow truck to pick up her car. When he arrived at work, the shop was already buzzing with activity. Thomas was working on a sedan that had come in late yesterday, and Jiri was arguing with a customer about the cost of a repair. Karl was in his office, visible through the glass window, talking on the phone. Martin walked to his bay and started setting up for the day. Around 9 o'clock, when things had quieted down a bit, he pulled out Eva's card and dialed the number. The phone rang 3 times before she answered. "Hello, this is Ava Novakova." "Ava, it is Martin," he said. "From last night. I wanted to call about your car." "Martin, hello," she said, and he could hear the smile in her voice. "Thank you for calling. Have you been able to arrange for the tow?" "Yes, I can send a truck out this afternoon," Martin said. "It should not be a problem. Once we have it here, I will take a look and give you an estimate for the repairs." "That would be wonderful," Ava said. "I really appreciate your help with this." "It is no trouble," Martin said. "It is what I do." There was a pause, and then Ava spoke again. "About that coffee I mentioned, are you free tomorrow afternoon? Maybe around 3? Martin hesitated. He usually worked until 5, but tomorrow was Saturday, and the shop closed early. "I could do that," he said. "Where did you have in mind?" "There is a cafe near the city centre," Ava said. "It is called Café Melantrich. Do you know it?" Martin did not, but he was not about to admit that. "I will find it," he said. 3 o'clock tomorrow, then." "Perfect," Ava said. "I will see you there." She hung up, and Martin stood there for a moment, the phone still in his hand. A date. Was it a date? Or was it just coffee? Just a thank you for helping her out? He did not know, and the uncertainty made him nervous. He put the phone away and tried to focus on work, but his mind kept drifting back to the conversation. Thomas noticed his distraction around mid-morning. "You are quieter than usual," he said, wiping his hands on a rag. "Something on your mind?" Martin shrugged. "Just thinking about a repair," he said, which was not entirely a lie. Thomas nodded, accepting the answer, and went back to his work. Martin was grateful that Thomas was not the type to pry. The tow truck brought Ava's car in around 2 in the afternoon. Martin walked around it, taking in the details. It was a nice car, a luxury sedan, only a few years old. The kind of car that cost more than he made in a year. He popped the hood and confirmed what he already knew. The serpentine belt had shredded, and there was some damage to the tensioner pulley as well. The battery would need to be tested, possibly replaced. It was a straightforward job, a few hours of work at most. He wrote up an estimate and called Eva back. "The parts and labor will run about 8,000 crowns, he told her. "I can have it done by Monday, if you approve the work." "That is fine," Eva said without hesitation. "Go ahead with the repairs." Martin was a little surprised. Most customers would have asked questions, tried to negotiate, complained about the cost. But Eva just accepted it, trusted his judgment. It was refreshing. "I will call you when it is ready," he said. "Thank you, Martin," she said. "And I will see you tomorrow at the cafe." "Yes," he said. "Tomorrow." He hung up and stood there for a moment, feeling a strange mix of anticipation and anxiety. He had not been on a date in years, had not even thought about dating. His life had been work and home. Work and home, a comfortable routine that left little room for anything else. But now there was this unexpected possibility, and he did not know what to make of it. The rest of the day passed in a blur. Martin worked on Eva's car, removing the old belt, replacing the tensioner pulley, installing the new belt and adjusting the tension. He tested the battery and found it was still good, just needed a charge. By the time he finished, it was almost closing time. He cleaned up, locked his bay, and headed home. That evening, he did something he had not done in a long time. He called his mother. She answered on the second ring, her voice bright and surprised. "Martin," she said, "what a nice surprise. We were not expecting to hear from you until Sunday." "I know," he said. "I just wanted to call, see how you and Father are doing." "We are fine, dear," she said. "Your father is out in the barn, fixing something as usual. You know how he is?" Martin smiled. He did know. His father was like him in that way, always fixing things, always working with his hands. "How is the city treating you?" his mother asked. "Are you eating well? Are you getting enough rest?" "I am fine, Mother," Martin said. "Work is steady. I am keeping busy." "That is good," she said. "But you know, busy is not the same as happy. When are you going to find a nice girl and settle down?" "Mother," Martin said, a familiar exasperation creeping into his voice. "I am not having this conversation again." "I am just saying," she said. "You are 32 years old. You should be thinking about your future, about a family." "I am thinking about my future," Martin said. "I am just taking it one day at a time." His mother sighed. "Well, if you ever do meet someone special, I hope you will tell us about her." "I will," Martin said. "I promise." They talked for a few more minutes, his mother filling him in on village gossip about the neighbors and the weather and the crops. Martin listened, enjoying the sound of her voice, the connection to the life he had left behind. When they finally hung up, he felt a little lighter, a little less alone. He made himself dinner, pasta with tomato sauce, simple and filling. As he ate, he thought about what his mother had said. Maybe she was right. Maybe it was time to think about more than just work. Maybe this thing with Eva, whatever it was the universe trying to tell him something. The next day, Saturday, Martin woke up with a sense of nervous energy. The shop closed at noon on Saturdays, and he had the whole afternoon free. He spent the morning working on routine maintenance jobs, oil changes and tire rotations, trying not to think about the meeting with Eva. But the closer it got to noon, the more anxious he became. He left the shop at 12:15, drove home, and stood in front of his closet trying to decide what to wear. He did not have much. Most of his clothes were work clothes or casual wear, jeans and t-shirts. He finally settled on a pair of dark jeans and a button-down shirt that was slightly wrinkled but clean. He shaved carefully, combed his hair, splashed on some cologne that was probably too old but smelled okay. He looked at himself in the mirror and barely recognized the man staring back. When was the last time he had made this much effort for anything? He drove into the city, found the cafe Eva had mentioned. It was in a historic building, all ornate facades and arched windows, the kind of place that catered to tourists and business people. Martin felt out of place as he walked in, conscious of his scuffed shoes and his calloused hands. The interior was elegant, with high ceilings and chandeliers and small tables covered in white cloth. Eva was already there, sitting at a table by the window. She looked up as he entered, and her face brightened with a smile. She was dressed casually, jeans and a soft sweater, her hair down around her shoulders. She looked different than she had in her business suit, more relaxed, more approachable. "Martin," she said, standing up as he approached. "I'm so glad you could make it." He sat down across from her, feeling the nervous energy settle into something calmer. "It is good to see you again," he said. They ordered coffee, and then they talked. Eva asked him about his work, about the shop, about the kinds of repairs he found most challenging. Martin found himself opening up, telling her about the satisfaction of diagnosing a difficult problem, about the pride he felt when a customer thanked him for a job well done. Eva listened with genuine interest, asking questions that showed she was really paying attention. In turn, Martin asked her about her work. She was vague at first, talking about management and operations, but gradually she opened up. She told him about the pressure of running a large organization, about the constant travel, about the loneliness of hotel rooms and business dinners. She talked about how sometimes she felt disconnected from the real world, from the people who actually did the work that made everything run. "I think that is why I enjoyed our drive so much," she said. "You reminded me of what really matters, the simple act of helping someone, of connecting with another person without any agenda." Martin did not know what to say to that, so he just nodded. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, sipping their coffee. "Tell me about your family," Eva said. "You mentioned them the other night." Martin talked about his parents, about the farm, about growing up in a small village where everyone knew everyone else. He talked about the decision to leave, to come to the city and find his own way. It was hard sometimes, feeling like he had abandoned them, but he also knew he could not have stayed. There was no future for him there, no opportunity. Eva nodded, understanding in her eyes. "I left my hometown too," she said. When I was young, I wanted more than what it could offer. I wanted to build something, to prove that I could succeed on my own terms. And I did. But sometimes I wonder what I gave up along the way. What do you mean? Martin asked. Connections, Ava said. Real connections with people. When you are focused on climbing the ladder, on achieving success, you lose sight of the things that actually make life meaningful. Friendships, relationships, the simple pleasure of spending time with someone who sees you for who you really are. Martin thought about his own life, about how isolated he had become. He had acquaintances at work, but no real friends. He had not been in a relationship in years. His life had narrowed down to work and sleep, with little room for anything else. Maybe we are not so different, he said quietly. Ava reached across the table and touched his hand, just briefly, but the gesture sent a jolt through him. Maybe we are not, she agreed. They talked for over 2 hours that afternoon, the cafe filling up and emptying around them, the light from the window shifting as the sun moved across the sky. Martin found himself laughing more than he had in months, Eva's wit and humor drawing out a side of himself he had almost forgotten existed. She told him stories about business trips gone wrong, about awkward meetings and cultural misunderstandings, and he countered with tales from the shop about impossible repair requests and customers who thought they knew more than the mechanics. When they finally stood to leave, Martin realized he did not want the afternoon to end. Can I walk you somewhere? He asked. Ava smiled. I would like that. They walked through the city streets, not really heading anywhere in particular, just enjoying each other's company. The autumn air was crisp and cool, leaves scattering across the pavement in small eddies of wind. Ava pulled her sweater tighter around herself, and Martin resisted the urge to offer his jacket. They talked about music and books, about favorite foods and childhood memories. Martin learned that Eva loved classical music, but had a secret fondness for old rock and roll. Eva learned that Martin had once wanted to be an engineer, but had found his calling in the more hands-on work of mechanics. As they walked past a small park, Ava stopped and looked at the playground, empty now in the late afternoon. I used to bring my nephew here when he was little, she said. We would spend hours on the swings, him laughing and me pushing until my arms were tired. He is grown now, studying at university. Time goes so fast. Martin heard something in her voice, a note of sadness or maybe regret. Do you have children of your own? He asked gently. Ava shook her head. No. I always thought there would be time for that later, after I had established my career. But later keeps getting pushed further away, and now I am not sure it will ever happen. She turned to look at him. What about you? Do you want a family someday? Martin had not thought about it much, but standing there with Eva, the question seemed suddenly important. I think I do, he said. I always imagined that my life would include that. A wife, children, a home filled with noise and laughter. But somewhere along the way, I stopped believing it was possible for me. Why not? Ava asked. You are a good man, Martin. Any woman would be lucky to have you in her life. Martin felt heat rise to his face. I do not know about that, he said. I am just a mechanic. I do not have much to offer. Ava stepped closer to him. You offered me kindness when I needed it most. You listened to me today, really listened, like what I had to say mattered. Do you know how rare that is? Martin did not know what to say, so he just looked at her, seeing the sincerity in her eyes. The moment stretched between them, charged with something unspoken. Then Eva glanced at her watch and sighed. "I should get going," she said. "I have some work I need to finish tonight." Martin nodded, trying to hide his disappointment. "Of course. Can I call you again?" he asked. "I would like to see you again, if you would like that too." "I would like that very much," Eva said. She reached into her purse and pulled out her phone. "Give me your number." Martin recited it, and Eva typed it into her phone. She sent him a quick text, so he would have her number as well. "Call me this week," she said. "Maybe we could have dinner." Martin smiled. "I will." They said goodbye at the edge of the park, and Martin watched as Eva walked away, disappearing into the flow of pedestrians on the busy street. He stood there for a long moment, feeling something shift inside him, something he had not felt in years. Hope, maybe, or possibility. He walked back to where he had parked his car, his mind replaying every moment of the afternoon. When he got home, he found himself restless, unable to settle. He paced around his small apartment, made himself dinner without really tasting it, tried to watch television, but could not focus. Finally, he sat down by the window and just thought about Eva, about the way she had looked at him, about the things she had said. His phone buzzed with a text message. It was from Eva. "Thank you for a wonderful afternoon. I have not enjoyed myself this much in a long time. Sleep well, Martin." He read the message 3 times before responding. "Thank you for the coffee and the conversation. I hope you have a good evening. Sweet dreams." It was simple, maybe too simple, but he sent it anyway. Within seconds, she replied with a smiley face emoji. Martin went to bed that night feeling lighter than he had in years. The next few days passed in a pleasant haze. Martin went to work, fixed cars, talked to customers, but part of his mind was always on Eva, wondering when he should call her, what he should say. He finished repairing her car on Monday and called to let her know. "The car is ready," he told her when she answered. "I tested everything, and it is running perfectly now." "That is excellent news," Eva said. "Can I pick it up this evening?" "Of course," Martin said. "We close at 6, but I can stay late if you need more time." "6 is perfect," Eva said. "I will see you then." Martin spent the rest of the day in a state of anticipation. He cleaned Eva's car inside and out, making sure every detail was perfect. He even put a small air freshener on the dashboard, something he never did for regular customers. When Eva arrived just before 6, the shop was mostly empty. Thomas had already left, and Jiri was finishing up his last job. Karel was in his office, working on paperwork. Martin met Eva in the parking lot, handed her the keys. "She looks good as new," he said. "You should not have any more problems with her." Eva smiled. "Thank you, Martin." She looked at the car, then back at him. "About that dinner, are you free Friday evening?" Martin felt his heart skip. "Yes," he said. "I am free." "Good," Eva said. "There is a restaurant I know, a little place near the river. Nothing too fancy, just good food and a nice atmosphere. Does 7 o'clock work for you?" 7 is perfect, Martin said. Eva gave him the address, and they stood there for a moment, neither quite ready to say goodbye. "I am looking forward to it," Eva said finally. "Me too," Martin said. He watched as she climbed into her car and drove away, the tail lights disappearing into the evening traffic. He stood there grinning like an idiot until Jiri walked past and gave him a strange look. "You okay, Martin?" Jiri asked. Martin nodded. "I am better than okay," he said. The days until Friday crawled by. Martin found himself thinking about Eva constantly, about what he would wear, what they would talk about, whether this was really happening or if he was somehow imagining it all. He told no one at work about the dinner, afraid that talking about it might somehow jinx it. On Friday afternoon, he left work early, went home, and took a long shower. He put on his best jeans and the same button-down shirt he had worn to the cafe, wishing he had something nicer. He drove to the restaurant Eva had mentioned, found parking a few blocks away. The restaurant was small and intimate, tucked away on a quiet street near the river. Soft music played from hidden speakers, and candles flickered on each table. Eva was already there, sitting at a corner table, and when she saw him, her face lit up with a smile that made his nervousness melt away. "Martin," she said as he approached, "you look wonderful." "So do you," he said, and meant it. She was wearing a simple dress, dark blue, that made her eyes stand out. Her hair was down again, falling in soft waves around her shoulders. They ordered wine, and then dinner. And as they ate, they talked. The conversation flowed easily, as it had at the cafe, moving from topic to topic without awkwardness. Eva told him about her week, about meetings and phone calls, and the endless demands of her work. Martin told her about the cars he had fixed, about a particularly stubborn transmission problem he had finally solved. But beneath the surface conversation, there was something else, an undercurrent of attraction that neither of them acknowledged directly, but both felt acutely. Martin found himself watching the way Ava's hands moved when she talked, the way she tucked her hair behind her ear when she was thinking. Ava found herself drawn to the steadiness in Martin's eyes, the quiet confidence that came from knowing his craft, from being good at what he did. After dinner, they walked along the river, the city lights reflecting on the dark water. The night was cool, and this time Martin did offer his jacket, and Eva accepted, pulling it around her shoulders. They walked close together, their arms occasionally brushing. "This has been a perfect evening," Eva said. "I do not want it to end." Martin stopped walking and turned to face her. "It does not have to end," he said quietly. Eva looked up at him, and in that moment, something passed between them, an understanding, an acknowledgement of what had been building since that first night on the dark country road. Martin leaned in slowly, giving her time to pull away if she wanted to. But Ava did not pull away. She met him halfway, and their lips touched in a kiss that was gentle and tentative at first, then deeper, more certain. When they finally pulled apart, both were breathing hard. Ava rested her forehead against his. "I have not felt this way in a very long time," she whispered. "Neither have I," Martin said. They stood there for a long moment, holding each other, the river flowing past them in the darkness. Martin felt something crack open inside him, something that had been closed off for years. This was real, he thought. This connection, this feeling, it was real. They walked back to where their cars were parked, hand in hand now, no longer hesitant about the contact. At her car, Ava turned to face him. "When can I see you again?" she asked. "Tomorrow," Martin suggested. Ava laughed. "I was hoping you would say that." They made plans to spend Saturday together, and then Ava kissed him one more time before getting into her car. Martin watched her drive away, then got into his own car and just sat there, his heart pounding, a smile on his face that he could not wipe away, even if he wanted to. The next few weeks passed in a blur of happiness that Martin had never experienced before. He and Eva saw each other as often as their schedules allowed, which was not as often as either would have liked, but every moment together felt precious. They met for lunch when Eva could steal away from work, had dinner on weekends, took long walks through the city as autumn deepened into early winter. Martin found himself opening up to her in ways he had never opened up to anyone. He told her about his fears and insecurities, about feeling stuck in a life that was safe but unfulfilling. Eva listened without judgment, sharing her own struggles with the pressure of her position, the loneliness that came with success, the feeling that she was always performing a role rather than being herself. "With you, I can just be Eva," she told him one evening as they sat in his apartment, sharing a bottle of wine. "Not the boss, not the executive, just me." Martin understood exactly what she meant, because he felt the same way. With Eva, he was not just a mechanic, not just the guy who fixed cars. He was Martin, fully himself, accepted and valued for who he was. But as the relationship deepened, complications began to surface. Eva was often called away on business trips, sometimes with only a few hours' notice. She would text him apologetically, promising to make it up to him when she returned. Martin understood, or tried to, but each cancellation left him feeling hollow, reminded him of the gulf between their worlds. He worked with his hands in a small shop. She ran a company he still knew very little about. She traveled internationally. He had never been outside the country. She lived in a modern apartment in the best part of the city. He lived in 2 rooms that smelled like motor oil no matter how much he cleaned. One evening, about 6 weeks after they met, Eva invited Martin to her apartment for the first time. He drove there after work, still in his work clothes, because he had not had time to go home and change. The building was even more impressive up close, all gleaming glass and polished marble, a doorman who greeted Eva by name and eyed Martin with barely concealed suspicion. Eva's apartment was on the 10th floor, a space that was 3 times the size of Martin's entire apartment. Floor-to-ceiling windows looked out over the city, furniture that looked too expensive to sit on, art on the walls that Martin assumed was original, though he knew nothing about art. Eva poured them both wine and gave him a tour, seeming almost embarrassed by the luxury. "I know it is too much," she said, "but I spend so little time here that it feels more like a hotel than a home." Martin nodded, feeling distinctly out of place. He stood by the window, looking down at the city lights, acutely aware of the contrast between this life and his own. Eva came up beside him, slipped her hand into his. "You are quiet," she said. "What are you thinking?" Martin hesitated, then decided to be honest. "I am thinking about how different our lives are," he said. "I look at all this, and I wonder what you see in me." Eva turned him to face her. "I see a man who is genuine and kind," she said. "A man who stopped to help a stranger on a dark road. A man who works hard and takes pride in what he does. Do you know how rare that is in my world? Everyone is always angling for something, trying to impress or manipulate or get ahead. But you are just yourself. That is what I see." Martin wanted to believe her, but the doubt lingered. They had dinner that night at her dining table, take-out food that Eva insisted on paying for, despite Martin's protests. They talked and laughed, and for a while, Martin forgot about his insecurities. But later, as he was leaving, Eva's phone rang. She answered it, and he heard her voice change, becoming crisp and professional. "Yes, I will be on the conference call," she said. "Schedule it for 6 in the morning. I will be ready." She hung up and turned back to Martin with an apologetic smile. "Sorry," she said. Work never stops. It is okay, Martin said, though he wondered how many mornings she started work before he even woke up, how many nights she worked while he was sleeping. They kissed goodbye at the door, and Martin drove home feeling unsettled. He wanted to be with Eva, but he was starting to realize that being with her meant accepting a life that he did not fully understand, a world that he was not sure he belonged in. At work the next day, Thomas noticed his distraction. "You have been different lately," Thomas said, as they worked side by side on neighboring cars. "Happier, maybe, but also somewhere else." Martin considered denying it, but Thomas had been kind to him over the years, had become something like a friend. "I met someone," he said. "A woman." Thomas raised his eyebrows. "That is good," he said. "It is about time." "What is she like?" "She is smart, successful, beautiful," Martin said. "She works in business, travels a lot. We are very different, but somehow it works." Thomas nodded slowly. "Different can be good," he said, "but different can also be hard. Just make sure you are not trying to be someone you are not." Martin thought about that as he worked. Was he trying to be someone he was not? He did not think so, but there were moments when he felt like he was pretending, like he was putting on a show of being comfortable in Eva's world, when really he felt like an imposter. That weekend, Eva surprised him by suggesting they visit his parents. "I would love to see where you grew up," she said, "to meet your family." Martin was hesitant. His parents lived simply. Their farmhouse was old and drafty, nothing like what Eva was used to. But Eva insisted, and so on Saturday morning they drove out to the countryside, the 3-hour drive passing quickly as they talked and sang along to the radio. Martin's parents were waiting for them when they arrived, standing in the doorway of the farmhouse, his mother wiping her hands on her apron, his father hanging back a little, shy as always. Martin made introductions, and his mother immediately pulled Eva into a hug, welcoming her like she was already family. They had lunch around the kitchen table, simple food that Martin's mother had spent all morning preparing. Roasted chicken, potatoes, vegetables from the garden, bread that was still warm from the oven. Eva ate with genuine pleasure, complimenting everything, asking questions about the farm, the village, the life Martin's parents had built. Martin watched her interact with his parents and felt something warm settle in his chest. She fit here, he realized. Despite the differences, despite the gulf between their worlds, Eva fit. After lunch, Martin showed Eva around the farm. They walked through the barn where he had learned to work with his hands, past the old tractor he had helped his father repair countless times. Eva asked questions about everything, genuinely interested, and Martin found himself telling her stories about his childhood, about learning to fix engines by trial and error, about the dreams he had once had of leaving and making something of himself. "You did make something of yourself," Eva said. "You became a skilled craftsman, someone who helps people, someone who is respected in his community. That is not nothing, Martin." "Maybe," Martin said. "But sometimes I wonder if I settled for less than I could have been." Eva stopped walking and turned to face him. "We all make choices," she said. "Some paths lead to wealth or fame or power. Other paths lead to different kinds of success, quieter kinds. Neither is better or worse. They are just different." Martin nodded, wanting to believe her. They returned to the house as the afternoon light was fading. Martin's mother insisted they stay for dinner and then for coffee and cake. It was late by the time they finally left, his mother hugging Eva goodbye, his father shaking her hand solemnly and telling her she was welcome any time. As they drove back to Prague, Eva was quiet, looking out the window at the dark countryside passing by. "Your parents are wonderful," she said finally. "You are lucky to have them." "I know," Martin said. Eva reached over and took his hand. "Thank you for sharing that with me," she said. "I know it was not easy for you." Martin squeezed her hand, feeling closer to her than he had before. Maybe Thomas was right. Maybe different did not have to be hard. Maybe it could just be what they made of it. But the complications continued to mount. A week later, Eva had to fly to Germany for a series of meetings. She was gone for 5 days, and they talked on the phone each night. But Martin could hear the exhaustion in her voice. When she returned, she was different, more stressed, more distant. "Work is overwhelming right now," she told him when they finally saw each other again. "There are so many demands, so many decisions I have to make. Sometimes I feel like I am being pulled in 100 different directions." Martin held her, wishing he could take some of the burden from her shoulders. "Is there anything I can do to help?" he asked. "Just being here helps," Eva said. "You are the one good thing in my life right now." But even as she said it, Martin could feel the weight of her responsibilities pressing down on both of them. He wondered how long they could sustain this, how long before the differences between them became too much to overcome. He pushed the thoughts away, told himself that love was enough, that they would find a way. But deep down, in a place he did not want to acknowledge, he was starting to have doubts. The tension came to a head on a cold December evening, about 3 months after they had met. Eva had promised they would spend the evening together, a rare Friday night when she had no work commitments. Martin had planned it all out: dinner at a small restaurant she had mentioned wanting to try, followed by a walk through the Christmas markets that had sprung up in the city centre. He left work early, went home and changed, put on cologne, checked his reflection in the mirror. He felt nervous, like a teenager on a first date, even though they had been together for months now. He arrived at Eva's apartment at 6, as they had agreed. He called her from the lobby, expecting her to come down any moment. But when she answered, her voice was tight with stress. "Martin, I am so sorry," she said. "Something has come up at work. There is a crisis with one of our suppliers, and I have to handle it. Can we reschedule?" Martin felt disappointment wash over him, but he tried to keep his voice neutral. "Sure," he said. "When were you thinking?" "I do not know," Eva said. "This might take all weekend. Can I call you when things settle down?" "Of course," Martin said. He hung up and stood in the lobby for a long moment, feeling foolish. The doorman looked at him with something like pity. Martin walked back to his car, got in, and just sat there. He knew he should be understanding, knew that Eva's work was important, that she had responsibilities. But he was tired of always coming second, tired of making plans that never materialized, tired of feeling like he was waiting for scraps of her time. He drove home and spent the evening alone, eating leftover pizza and watching television without really seeing it. His phone buzzed with texts from Eva, apologizing, explaining, promising to make it up to him. He replied with short, understanding messages, but inside he was churning with frustration and doubt. The weekend passed slowly. Eva did not call, and Martin did not reach out. He spent Saturday working on his car, finally replacing that starter motor he had been putting off for months. The work was therapeutic, gave him something to focus on besides his spiraling thoughts. On Sunday, he drove out to see his parents, needing the comfort of the familiar. His mother took one look at his face and knew something was wrong. "What is it, dear?" she asked as they sat at the kitchen table, the same table where he had eaten thousands of meals growing up. "It is Eva," Martin said. "I do not know if this is working." His mother reached across the table and took his hand. "Tell me what is happening." Martin explained about the cancelled plans, about how busy Eva always was, about feeling like he was competing with her work for her attention. His mother listened without interrupting, the way she always had. "When you love someone," she said finally, "you have to accept all of them, including their work, their responsibilities, their commitments. But you also have to make sure they are willing to do the same for you. Love is not about one person always sacrificing for the other." "Is that what you think I am doing?" Martin asked. "Sacrificing?" His mother squeezed his hand. "I think you are trying very hard to fit into her world," she said. "But I wonder if she is trying just as hard to fit into yours." Martin thought about that. It was true that he had been the one making most of the adjustments, learning about her work, meeting her expectations, waiting for her schedule to open up. But what had Eva given up for him? What sacrifices had she made? "Maybe you need to talk to her," his mother said. "Really talk. Not just accept whatever she says. Tell her how you feel, what you need from her. If she truly loves you, she will listen." Martin drove back to Prague that evening, with his mother's words echoing in his mind. He knew she was right, knew he could not keep going on like this, always understanding, always accommodating, never asking for what he needed. He texted Eva when he got home. "We need to talk. Can you come over tomorrow evening?" Her reply came almost immediately. "Yes, is everything okay?" "We will talk tomorrow," Martin wrote back. He did not sleep well that night, rehearsing in his mind what he wanted to say, how he wanted to say it. He was not good at confrontation, had spent most of his life avoiding conflict. But this was too important to let slide. Eva arrived at his apartment the next evening at 7. She looked tired, Martin noticed, dark circles under her eyes, her shoulders tight with tension. They sat at his small kitchen table, and for a moment neither spoke. "I'm sorry about Friday," Eva said finally. "I know I let you down." "It is not just Friday," Martin said. "It is every time your work comes first, every time you cancel plans, every time I feel like I am waiting for you to have time for me. I understand that your job is important, but I need to know that I am important too." Eva looked stricken. "You are important," she said. "You are the most important person in my life." "Then why does it not feel that way?" Martin asked. "Why do I always feel like I am competing with your work?" "Because you are," Eva said quietly. She looked down at her hands. "I have spent my whole adult life building my career, proving myself, climbing the ladder. It is who I am. It is what defines me. I do not know how to be any other way." Martin felt something crack inside him. "Maybe that is the problem," he said. "Maybe you cannot have it all. Maybe you have to choose." Eva's eyes flashed with anger, the first time he had seen her truly angry. "So you are asking me to choose between you and my career? That is not fair." "I am asking you to find balance," Martin said. "I am asking you to make me a priority, not an afterthought. There is a difference." Eva stood up, paced to the window and back. I do not know if I can give you what you want, she said. My work is not something I can just set aside. There are people depending on me, responsibilities I cannot ignore. I understand that, Martin said. But there is also me, depending on you, hoping that what we have is worth fighting for. Eva turned to look at him, tears in her eyes now. It is worth fighting for, she said. You are worth fighting for. But I do not know how to do this, how to balance everything. I am terrified of failing at both. Martin stood and went to her, took her hands in his. Then let me help you, he said. Stop trying to do everything alone. Let me in, really in, not just when it is convenient, but all the time. Eva leaned into him, and he held her as she cried quietly against his chest. They stood like that for a long time, neither speaking, just holding each other. When Eva finally pulled back, she wiped her eyes and gave him a shaky smile. I will try, she said. I promise I will try to be better about making time for us. Martin nodded. That is all I am asking, he said. They sat back down and talked for hours, really talked about their fears and hopes and what they wanted from the relationship. It was difficult and uncomfortable, but also necessary. By the time Eva left, after midnight, they both felt like they understood each other better, like they had a path forward. The next few weeks were better. Eva made an effort to carve out time for Martin, to keep her promises, to be present when they were together. She was not perfect. There were still work emergencies and last-minute changes. But she communicated better, explained more, made Martin feel like he was part of her life rather than just an appendage to it. Martin, for his part, tried to be more understanding about the demands of her position, to not take every cancellation as a personal rejection. They found a rhythm that worked, or at least worked better than before. They spent Christmas together, a quiet celebration in Martin's apartment, with a small tree and home-cooked dinner. Eva gave him a beautiful set of mechanics tools, high-quality German ones that must have cost a fortune. Martin gave her a framed photograph of the two of them that a stranger had taken on one of their walks, both of them laughing at something now forgotten. Eva cried when she opened it, said it was the best gift she had ever received. On New Year's Eve, they went to a party at the apartment of one of Eva's colleagues. It was Martin's first time meeting people from her work world, and he was nervous about it. The apartment was in the same building as Eva's, all sleek furniture and expensive art, and people in designer clothes sipping champagne. Martin wore the same button-down shirt he always wore, feeling hopelessly out of place. Eva introduced him to people as her partner, and Martin shook hands and made small talk, and tried not to feel like everyone was judging him. Some of Eva's colleagues were kind, asking about his work with genuine interest. Others were polite but distant, their eyes sliding past him to focus on more important people. Martin found himself retreating to a corner of the room, watching Eva work the crowd with practiced ease. She was in her element here, he realized, charming and confident, saying the right things to the right people. It was a side of her he rarely saw, and it reminded him of how different their worlds truly were. Around 11, a man approached Martin, glass of champagne in hand. He was in his 50s, silver-haired and expensively dressed. "You are Martin, yes?" he said. "Eva's friend." Martin nodded. "Yes." "I am Philip," the man said. "I work with Eva. She talks about you quite a bit." "That is good to hear," Martin said, not sure what else to say. Philip studied him for a moment. You are a mechanic, she said. That must be interesting work. It is, Martin said. I enjoy it. Philip nodded. Ava is special, he said. Brilliant, driven, one of the best executives I have ever worked with. She has a bright future ahead of her. Martin waited, sensing there was more. She also works too hard, Philip continued. Always has. Some people are like that. They define themselves by their work. It is not easy being with someone like that. You have to be willing to share them with their ambitions. I know, Martin said. Philip smiled, but it did not reach his eyes. I am sure you do. Just remember that Ava has a lot of people counting on her. She carries a heavy burden. He walked away before Martin could respond, leaving him standing there with a strange feeling in his gut. What had that been about? Was Philip warning him, or threatening him, or just making conversation? Martin could not tell. At midnight, Ava found him and they kissed as fireworks exploded over the city, visible through the floor-to-ceiling windows. Happy New Year, Ava whispered. Happy New Year, Martin replied. But as they stood there, surrounded by Eva's world, he could not shake the feeling that something was still not quite right, that there was something he was missing, some piece of the puzzle that had not yet fallen into place. The truth came crashing down on a Tuesday morning in mid-January. Martin arrived at work to find the shop buzzing with unusual energy. Thomas and Jiri were standing by the coffee maker, talking in low, excited voices. Even Karl had emerged from his office, which was rare before 9 in the morning. What is going on? Martin asked as he hung up his jacket. Thomas turned to him, eyes wide. Have you not heard? The company is being restructured. There are rumors that the owner is selling or maybe bringing in new management. Nobody knows for sure. What company? Martin asked, confused. Our company, Jiri said. Novacek Automotive. The whole organization, not just this shop. Martin felt a chill run down his spine. What do you mean, the whole organization? Karl stepped forward, his face serious. Martin, we need to talk. They went into Karl's office, and Karl closed the door behind them. He gestured for Martin to sit, but remained standing himself, hands shoved in his pockets. I should have told you this before, Karl said. But I did not think it mattered. Did not think what mattered? Martin asked. Karl took a deep breath. Novacek Automotive is not just this shop. This is one location in a network of 23 repair shops across the country. The whole operation is owned by a parent company, a holding company that manages automotive services. My father started this shop 40 years ago, but 15 years ago he sold it to the larger organization. I stayed on as manager, but I do not own it anymore. Martin processed this slowly. So who owns it? The parent company is called Novacek Holdings, Karl said. It is a large operation, hundreds of employees, millions of crowns in revenue. And it is run by Eva Novakova. She is the chief executive officer and majority shareholder. The world seemed to tilt sideways. Martin gripped the arms of his chair, trying to steady himself. Eva, he repeated stupidly. My Eva. Karl looked uncomfortable. I did not know you were seeing her until about a month ago, when one of the other managers mentioned that she had been asking about you. Asking about me? Martin said. What do you mean? Karl shrugged. Apparently she wanted to know about your work performance, your history with the company, your character. I thought maybe she was considering you for a promotion or something. I had no idea you two were involved. Martin stood up abruptly, his mind racing. All this time, Eva had never told him. She had let him believe she worked in business management, which was technically true, but left out the crucial detail that she managed the company he worked for. She was not just some executive, she was his ultimate boss, the person who owned the shop, who paid his salary, who could hire or fire him with a word. Why had she not told him? The question burned through him like acid. They had talked about everything, or so he thought. She knew where he worked, knew he was a mechanic at Novacek Automotive. She must have known from the very beginning, from that first night when he told her where he worked, and she had said nothing. "Martin, are you okay?" Carol asked. "You look pale." "I need to go," Martin said. He walked out of the office, grabbed his jacket, and headed for the door. Thomas called after him, but Martin did not stop. He got in his car and drove, not really knowing where he was going, just needing to move, to think, to process what he had just learned. He ended up at a park near the river, the same park where he and Eva had walked that first afternoon. He sat on a bench, staring at the water, trying to make sense of it all. Every interaction they had ever had suddenly took on new meaning. The way she had been vague about her work, the expensive apartment, the business trips and important meetings, the colleague at the New Year's party who had warned him that Eva carried a heavy burden. It all made sense now. She was not just successful, she was powerful. She ran a company, made decisions that affected hundreds of lives. And she had been seeing him, a mechanic who worked in one of her shops, without ever telling him the truth. Why? Was it because she thought he would not understand? Or because she enjoyed having a relationship where she was not the boss, where she could just be Eva? Or was there something more sinister, some reason she had kept this enormous secret? Martin's phone rang. It was Eva. He stared at it for a long moment, then declined the call. It rang again immediately. Declined again. A text message appeared. "Martin, please call me. I can explain." He stared at the message, anger and hurt warring inside him. What was there to explain? She had lied to him, or at least lied by omission, for months. She had let him pour out his heart to her, talk about his work, his hopes, his insecurities, all while knowing that she held his professional fate in her hands. Another text. "I know you found out. Please let me talk to you." Martin stood up and started walking, following the path along the river. His mind was a chaos of emotions. Part of him wanted to call her back, to hear her explanation, to believe there was some reasonable justification for what she had done. But another part, the part that felt betrayed and foolish, wanted nothing to do with her. He thought about that first night, how she had seemed so grateful for his help. Had that been real, or had she been playing him from the start? He thought about the coffee, the dinners, the walks, the conversations. Had any of it been genuine, or was he just some kind of experiment for her, a way to see how the other half lived? His phone rang again. This time it was not Eva. It was a number he did not recognize. He answered it without thinking. "Martin, it is Philip. We met at the New Year's party. The silver-haired man, Eva's colleague." Martin remembered him. "What do you want?" Martin asked, his voice hard. "I heard you found out about Eva's position," Philip said. "I thought you might want to talk." "There is nothing to talk about," Martin said. Philip was quiet for a moment. "I understand. You are angry," he said. "But there are things you need to know. things that might help you understand why Eva did what she did. I do not care, Martin said. She lied to me. That is all I need to know. She did not lie, Philip said. She just did not tell you everything. There is a difference. Not much of one, Martin said. Philip sighed. Eva keeps her personal and professional lives very separate, he said. She has to. Running a company like Novacek Holdings means being constantly scrutinized, constantly judged. People are always trying to get close to her for the wrong reasons, to advance their careers or gain influence. When she met you, you did not know who she was, and I think that was liberating for her. She could just be herself, not the boss, not the executive, just Eva. So she used me, Martin said bitterly, to play at being normal. No, Philip said firmly. She fell in love with you. I have known Eva for 15 years, and I have never seen her like this with anyone. She talks about you constantly, lights up when your name is mentioned. Whatever her reasons for not telling you, they were not malicious. Martin wanted to believe that, but it was hard. How can I trust anything she says now? He asked. You talk to her, Philip said. You let her explain, and then you decide. But do not throw away something real just because the circumstances are complicated. Martin ended the call and kept walking. He walked, for hours, through the city streets, past shops and cafes, and people going about their ordinary lives. By the time he finally stopped, it was late afternoon, and he was exhausted, both physically and emotionally. He found himself standing outside Eva's building. He had not consciously decided to come here. His feet had just carried him. He looked up at the glass and steel facade, knowing she was up there somewhere, probably waiting for him to call, to give her a chance to explain. He pulled out his phone and called her. She answered on the first ring. Martin, she said, and he could hear the relief in her voice. Where are you? Downstairs, he said. Can I come up? Yes, she said. Yes, of course. The doorman recognized him this time and let him through without question. Martin rode the elevator up to the 10th floor, his heart pounding. When the doors opened, Eva was standing in the hallway, waiting for him. She looked terrible, her eyes red, her face pale, still wearing the clothes she must have put on that morning. Martin, she said, stepping toward him. He held up a hand. Just tell me why, he said. Why did you not tell me? Eva's face crumpled. Come inside, she said. Please. He followed her into the apartment. They sat on the couch, not touching, the space between them feeling like a canyon. I did not tell you because I was scared, Eva said. When I met you that night, you were so kind, so genuine. You helped me without expecting anything in return. And when you told me you worked at Novacek Automotive, I realized this was my chance to have something real, something that was not about my position or my money or my power. I know I should have told you, especially as we got closer. But I was terrified. Terrified that if you knew, everything would change. That you would see me differently, treat me differently. Terrified that I would lose you. Martin shook his head. So instead you let me talk about my job, about the shop, about my boss, all while knowing that you were the person ultimately in charge. Do you know how that makes me feel? Like I was performing for you without knowing it. I never saw it that way, Eva said, tears streaming down her face. I just saw you, Martin, the man I was falling in love with. Your job was part of who you were, but it was not why I cared about you." Martin wanted to believe her, but the betrayal was too fresh, too raw. "You should have told me," he said. "The moment you realized we were becoming serious. You should have told me." "I know," Ava said. "I know. And I am so sorry. I made a terrible mistake, and I do not know how to fix it." They sat in silence for a long moment. Finally, Martin spoke. "I need time," he said. "I need to think about this, about us, about whether I can trust you again." Ava nodded, wiping her eyes. "I understand," she said. "Take all the time you need. But please, Martin, do not give up on us. What we have is real, no matter how it started." Martin stood to leave. Ava stood too, looking like she wanted to reach for him, but was afraid to. He walked to the door, then paused and turned back. "Did you ask Karel about me?" he asked. "Did you have him investigated?" Ava looked stricken. "Not investigated," she said. "I just wanted to make sure you were who I thought you were, that I was not being fooled." "The irony," Martin said quietly. He left the apartment and took the elevator down, feeling more confused than ever. Part of him understood Ava's reasoning, could even sympathize with it. But another part felt manipulated, like their entire relationship had been built on a foundation of deception. As he drove home, he knew that whatever happened next, things could never go back to the way they were. The truth had changed everything. Martin did not call Ava for 3 days. He went to work, kept his head down, did his job. His co-workers noticed something was wrong, but had the decency not to ask. Even Thomas, usually so perceptive, left him alone. Martin was grateful for the space, for the chance to sort through his tangled feelings without having to explain them to anyone. At night, he lay awake in his small apartment, staring at the ceiling, replaying every moment of his relationship with Ava. He looked for signs he should have seen, clues that would have revealed her secret. But there had been nothing, or at least nothing obvious. She had been careful, or maybe he had just been too blinded by his feelings to notice. On the 4th day, his mother called. She had a 6th sense for when he was troubled, always had. "What is wrong?" she asked as soon as he answered. "Nothing," Martin said automatically. "Do not lie to your mother," she said. "I can hear it in your voice." Martin sighed and told her everything. About Ava being the owner of the company, about her keeping it secret, about how betrayed he felt. His mother listened without interrupting, the way she always did. When he finished, she was quiet for a long moment. "Do you love her?" she asked finally. "Yes," Martin said without hesitation. "Then you have to decide if what she did is something you can forgive," his mother said. "People make mistakes, even people we love. The question is whether the mistake defines who they are, or whether it was just a moment of weakness, of fear." "I do not know how to tell the difference," Martin said. "You know," his mother said. "Deep down, you know. You are just afraid to trust your own judgment." Martin thought about that after they hung up. His mother was right. He did know. Ava had made a mistake, a significant one, but it had not been malicious. She had been afraid, and fear made people do foolish things. The question was whether he could move past it, whether he could rebuild the trust that had been broken. On the 5th day, Ava sent him a letter, not an email or a text, but an actual handwritten letter, delivered to his apartment by courier. Martin stared at the envelope for a long time before opening it. The letter was several pages long, written in Eva's neat, elegant handwriting. She did not make excuses or try to justify what she had done. Instead, she laid out her feelings with raw honesty, explaining how scared she had been of losing him, how the longer she waited to tell him, the harder it became, how she had convinced herself that it did not matter, because what they had was separate from work. She wrote about her loneliness before meeting him, about how success had come at the cost of genuine human connection, about how he had made her feel seen in a way no one else ever had. She wrote about her regrets and her fears and her hopes for the future. At the end of the letter, she wrote something that pierced through all of Martin's defenses. "I do not expect you to forgive me right away, or maybe ever. But I need you to know that loving you is the most real thing I have ever felt. Everything else in my life is performance, is strategy, is carefully constructed. But with you, I was just myself. If you can find it in your heart to give me another chance, I promise I will never keep anything from you again. I will choose you, Martin. I will choose us." Martin read the letter 3 times, and each time he felt his anger soften, his hurt transform into something more manageable. He thought about what he wanted, what really mattered to him. He wanted Eva, wanted the connection they had built, wanted to believe that love could survive even when trust had been damaged. On the 6th day, Martin called Eva. She answered immediately, her voice hesitant, fearful. "Martin," she said. "I got your letter," he said. "Can we meet?" "When?" she asked. "Now," he said. They met at the same cafe where they had their first coffee, sitting at the same table by the window. Eva looked nervous, her hands wrapped around her cup, not drinking, just holding it like a talisman. "Thank you for meeting me," she said. Martin nodded. "I have been thinking a lot about what happened," he said. "About what you did and why you did it." "And?" Eva asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "And I understand," Martin said. "I do not like it, and I am still hurt, but I understand. Fear makes us do stupid things sometimes." Eva's eyes filled with tears. "I was so scared of losing you," she said. "But I realize now that by not telling you, I almost lost you anyway." "Yes," Martin said. "You did." "I am sorry," Eva said. "I am so sorry." "I know," Martin said. He reached across the table and took her hand. "But we have to move forward differently. No more secrets, no more keeping parts of your life hidden from me. If we are going to make this work, we have to be completely honest with each other, even when it is hard. Especially when it is hard." Eva nodded, squeezing his hand. "I promise," she said. "No more secrets." Martin felt something ease in his chest. "Okay," he said. "Then let us try again." They talked for hours, working through the hurt and the misunderstandings, laying out new ground rules for their relationship. Eva promised to be more open about her work, to include Martin in that part of her life, rather than keeping it separate. Martin promised to ask for what he needed, rather than silently accepting whatever Eva could give. It was not easy, and there were moments when old hurts surfaced, when words were said that stung. But they pushed through, committed to finding a way forward together. As they were leaving the cafe, Eva stopped him. "There is something else you need to know," she said. Martin felt his stomach drop. "What?" "There is going to be a company meeting next week," Eva said. all the shop managers and key employees. I have to make an announcement about some changes to the organization, and I want you to be there." "Why?" Martin asked. "Because you are part of my life now," Ava said, "and I am not going to hide that anymore. I want people to know about us. I want to stop living in separate worlds." Martin was not sure how he felt about that. Going public with their relationship would change things, would make him the subject of gossip and speculation. But he also knew Ava was right. If they were going to have a real future together, they could not keep hiding. "Okay," he said. "I will be there." Ava smiled, a real smile this time, the first he had seen since the truth came out. "Thank you," she said. The next few days were different. Ava made a visible effort to include Martin in her life, calling him during the day just to check in, inviting him to her apartment for dinner that she cooked herself, badly, but with genuine effort. Martin found himself relaxing into the relationship again, the sharp edges of his hurt gradually smoothing out. But he also knew that the real test was still ahead. The company meeting was on Friday afternoon, held in a conference room at the headquarters of Novacek Holdings, a building Martin had never been to before. It was modern and imposing, all glass and chrome, with the company logo prominently displayed in the lobby. Martin arrived early, dressed in the same shirt and pants he wore to dinner with Eva, the closest thing he had to business attire. He felt completely out of place among the managers and executives in their suits and ties. Karl was there, and he nodded at Martin with something like sympathy. Thomas was there too, looking uncomfortable in a jacket that was too tight across his shoulders. The room gradually filled with people Martin did not know, all of them talking in low voices, speculating about what the announcement would be. At exactly 3:00, Eva entered the room. She was in full executive mode, wearing a sharp business suit, her hair pulled back, her face composed and professional. But when her eyes found Martin in the crowd, they softened for just a moment, a brief acknowledgement of his presence. Ava moved to the front of the room and began her presentation. She talked about company performance, about growth opportunities, about plans for expansion. Martin only half listened, his attention caught by the way she commanded the room, the way people hung on her every word. This was Eva in her element, powerful and confident, and it was both impressive and intimidating. Then Ava shifted gears. "There is one more thing I need to address," she said. "As many of you know, I have always kept my personal life separate from my professional life, but I have come to realize that this separation is not sustainable, and more importantly, it is not honest." She looked directly at Martin. "I am in a relationship with Martin Svoboda, who works as a mechanic at our Prague location. We met by chance several months ago, and over time we have built something meaningful together. I am sharing this with you because I believe in transparency, and because I want to make it clear that this relationship will not affect how this company is run or how decisions are made. Martin will not receive special treatment because of his connection to me, and I expect all of you to treat him with the same professionalism you would show any other employee." The room had gone completely silent. Martin could feel dozens of eyes on him, assessing, judging. His face burned with embarrassment, and something else, maybe pride, that Ava had been willing to do this, to make such a public declaration. Ava continued talking, moving back to business matters, but Martin barely heard her. When the meeting finally ended, people filed out quickly, many of them glancing back at Martin with curiosity or barely concealed amusement. Karl stopped beside Martin's chair. "That took guts," he said quietly. "For both of you." Martin nodded, not trusting himself to speak. Eva was surrounded by managers asking questions, and Martin slipped out of the room before she could break away. He walked quickly to his car, needing air, needing space. His phone buzzed with a text from Eva. "Where did you go?" "I needed to leave," he replied. "That was a lot." "I know," she wrote back. "Are you okay?" "I will be," he replied. "Can I see you tonight?" she asked. "Yes," he wrote, "tonight." Martin drove home slowly, processing what had just happened. Eva had put her reputation on the line for him, had made their relationship public in the most official way possible. It was a gesture of commitment, of trust, and despite his discomfort with being the center of attention, Martin felt something warm settle in his chest. Maybe this would work after all. Maybe they could find a way to bridge their different worlds, to build something lasting despite the complications. But he also knew that going public was only the beginning. The real challenge would be sustaining the relationship day after day, making it work despite the pressures and demands of Eva's position. As he unlocked his apartment door, his phone rang. It was his mother. "I heard from your father," she said. He was talking to Karol's father at the market. "Is it true? Is Eva really the owner of the whole company?" "It is true," Martin said. "Mother, I need to ask you something. What happens if this does not work out? What happens if we try and it still falls apart?" His mother was quiet for a moment. "Then you will have tried," she said, "and that is all any of us can do. Try and hope, and keep trying until we get it right." Martin thought about that as he hung up. His mother was right. All he could do was try. Take it one day at a time, and hope that love would be enough to carry them through whatever came next. That evening, Eva came to Martin's apartment carrying takeout food and a bottle of wine. She looked exhausted, the weight of the day showing in the lines around her eyes, the tension in her shoulders. They ate in comfortable silence, neither one quite ready to talk about what had happened at the meeting. After dinner, they sat together on Martin's worn couch, Eva leaning against him, his arm around her shoulders. "I know today was hard," Eva said finally. "I am sorry I put you in that position without warning you first." "It is okay," Martin said, though he was not entirely sure it was. "Why did you do it?" "Because I was tired of hiding," Eva said. "Tired of pretending that you were not the most important person in my life. And because I wanted everyone to know that I am serious about us, that this is not just some passing thing for me." Martin felt his throat tighten with emotion. "It is not a passing thing for me either," he said. Eva turned to look up at him. "Then we are going to make this work," she said. "Whatever it takes." They sat like that for a long time, just holding each other, both of them knowing that they had crossed some invisible line, that there was no going back now. The relationship was real and acknowledged, and that meant they had to find a way to navigate all the complications that came with it. The next few weeks were an adjustment. Word spread quickly through the company about Martin and Eva's relationship, and Martin found himself the subject of gossip and speculation. Some people were supportive, some were skeptical, and some were openly hostile, seeing him as someone who was using his connection to Eva to get ahead. Martin tried to ignore it, to focus on his work and let his actions speak for themselves. But it was not easy. At the shop, things became awkward. Thomas remained steadfast in his friendship, but Jiri started making snide comments about Martin being the boss's boyfriend, about getting special treatment. Karol was professional but distant, clearly uncomfortable with the whole situation. Martin felt increasingly isolated, caught between two worlds, and not quite belonging in either. Eva was dealing with her own challenges. Some members of her executive team questioned her judgment, worried that her relationship with an employee would create conflicts of interest or damage the company's reputation. Eva stood firm, making it clear that her personal life was her own business and would not affect her professional decisions. But Martin could see the toll it was taking on her. The way she came home exhausted and stressed, the way she sometimes snapped at him over small things, before catching herself and apologizing. One evening in late February, about 6 weeks after the company meeting, things came to a head. Martin had been working late on a particularly difficult repair, and by the time he finished, it was almost 9 o'clock. He was supposed to meet Eva for dinner at 8, but he had lost track of time. When he finally checked his phone, he had 4 missed calls and several increasingly worried text messages. He called her back immediately. "Where were you?" Eva asked, her voice tight with stress. "I was so worried." "I'm sorry," Martin said. "I was working and I lost track of time." "You could have called," Eva said. "You could have let me know you were going to be late." "I know," Martin said. "I'm sorry. I just got caught up in the work." There was a pause, and then Eva's voice changed, became harder. "This is exactly what I was talking about," she said. "You do not understand what it is like for me, worrying about you, wondering if something happened. I have responsibilities, Martin. I have a company to run. I cannot be distracted by worrying about whether you are okay." Martin felt anger flare in his chest. "I said I was sorry," he said. "It was one time, Eva, and I do understand responsibility. I have a job too, work that matters to me. Just because I am not running a company does not mean my work is less important." "That is not what I meant," Eva said. "I know what you meant," Martin said. "You meant that your work is more important than mine, that your time is more valuable, that I should always be the one who adjusts and accommodates. I am tired of it, Eva. I am tired of feeling like I am not enough." The line went quiet. When Eva spoke again, her voice was thick with tears. "Is that really how you feel?" she asked. Martin sighed, his anger draining away as quickly as it had come. "Sometimes, yes," he said honestly. "Sometimes I feel like I am always trying to fit into your world, and you are not trying to fit into mine." "I do not know how to fix that," Eva said. "Tell me how to fix it." Martin thought about that. "I do not know either," he said. "Maybe we just need to accept that we are different, that our lives are different, and stop trying to make everything perfect. Maybe we just need to be honest with each other, even when it is hard." "Can you come over?" Eva asked. "I do not want to have this conversation on the phone." Martin drove to her apartment, and they talked for hours. It was difficult and painful, both of them saying things that hurt, both of them acknowledging failures and frustrations. But it was also necessary, a clearing of the air that had been building for weeks. By the time Martin left, after midnight, they had not solved all their problems, but they had a better understanding of each other, a renewed commitment to making it work. The real crisis came 2 weeks later. Martin was at work when Karl called him into the office, his face grave. "There is a situation," Karl said. "One of the other mechanics, Jiri, has filed a formal complaint with Human Resources. He is claiming that you are receiving preferential treatment because of your relationship with Eva." "That is ridiculous," Martin said. "I do my work just like everyone else." "I know," Karl said, "but the complaint has to be investigated. It is company policy. Someone from headquarters will be coming to interview people, review your work records, that sort of thing. Martin felt sick. This was exactly what he had been afraid of, that his relationship with Eva would poison his work life, that people would always question whether he had earned his place or just been given it. "Do you think I get special treatment?" Martin asked Karl directly. Karl met his eyes. "No," he said. "You are one of the best mechanics I have, and you have been to since before you started dating Eva. But my opinion is not the only one that matters." The investigation took a week during which Martin felt like he was under a microscope. Investigators interviewed his co-workers, reviewed every repair he had done over the past 6 months, examined his pay records and performance evaluations. It was humiliating and exhausting, and Martin could see the speculation in everyone's eyes every time he walked into the shop. Eva was going through her own hell. The investigation reflected badly on her judgment, raised questions about whether she could separate her personal and professional lives. There were calls from board members, tense meetings with her executive team, threats of formal complaints to the company's ethics committee. Through it all, Martin and Eva leaned on each other, talking every night, supporting each other through the stress. But the strain was showing. Eva lost weight, dark circles appearing under her eyes. Martin found himself short-tempered and withdrawn, snapping at customers and co-workers. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the investigation concluded. Martin was called into a meeting with Karl and a representative from Human Resources, a severe-looking woman in her 50s. "Mr. Svoboda," she said, "we have completed our investigation into the complaint filed against you. I need you to know that we take all complaints seriously and conducted a thorough review of your work history and performance." Martin nodded, his mouth dry. "And?" After reviewing all the evidence, the woman said, "We have found no merit to the complaint. Your work performance has been consistently excellent, and there is no evidence that you have received any special treatment or benefits as a result of your relationship with Miss Novakova. In fact, if anything, the records show that you have been working longer hours and taking on more difficult jobs since the relationship became public." Martin felt relief wash over him so intensely that he felt dizzy. "So I am cleared?" he asked. "You are cleared," the woman said. "However, I do need to advise you that going forward, you should be mindful of maintaining appropriate boundaries between your personal and professional lives. Any appearance of impropriety could lead to future complaints." "I understand," Martin said. The woman stood and shook his hand, then left. Karl clapped Martin on the shoulder. "Congratulations," he said. "I knew it would turn out this way." Martin nodded, but he felt hollowed out, drained by the whole experience. He called Eva as soon as he got outside. "It is over," he said when she answered. "They cleared me." Eva's sob of relief was audible, even over the phone. "Thank God," she said. "Can I see you tonight?" "Yes," Martin said. "Tonight?" They met at Martin's apartment, and when he opened the door, Eva practically fell into his arms. They held each other for a long time, neither speaking, just drawing comfort from the contact. "I thought we were going to lose everything," Eva whispered. "So did I," Martin admitted. They sat together on the couch, and Eva told him about her own ordeal during the investigation. She had faced a special meeting of the board of directors, had been questioned about her judgment and her ability to lead the company effectively. Several board members had suggested that she should end the relationship with Martin, that it was causing too many problems and creating a liability for the company. "What did you tell them?" Martin asked. I told them that my personal life was not up for debate, Ava said. That I had done nothing unethical, that you had done nothing unethical, and that if they did not like it, they were welcome to try to remove me from my position. But they would not succeed because I own the majority of shares and they have no legal grounds. Martin stared at her. You risked your position for us? For me? Ava looked at him steadily. Yes, she said. Because you are worth it. We are worth it. Martin felt something shift inside him. Something fundamental. Ava had not just said she chose him. She had proven it, had put her career and her company on the line to defend their relationship. It was the most powerful declaration of love he could imagine. I do not know what to say, he said. Say you are not going to give up on us, Ava said. Say that we are going to get through this together. Martin took her hands in his. I am not giving up, he said. I promise you, I am not giving up. They spent that night talking about the future, about what they wanted and how they could make it work. For the first time since the truth had come out, Martin felt like they were truly on the same page, truly partners facing the world together. The next few months were better. The cloud of the investigation lifted, and gradually people moved on to other gossip, other concerns. Martin found his rhythm at work again, and his co-workers slowly stopped treating him like he was different. Jiri eventually left the company, taking a job at another shop, and the tension in Martin's workplace eased considerably. Ava made changes too. She started delegating more, trusting her executive team to handle things that she had previously insisted on controlling herself. It meant she had more time for Martin, more energy to invest in their relationship. They established routines, regular date nights, weekend trips to the countryside, quiet evenings at home. In May, almost 8 months after they first met, Ava invited Martin to move in with her. They were having dinner at her apartment, and she just said it, casually, like she was asking him to pass the salt. I think you should move in here, she said, with me, permanently. Martin looked up from his plate, surprised. You want me to live here? Ava nodded. This place is too big for just me, and your apartment is too small for both of us. Besides, I hate the nights when you are not here. I want to wake up with you every morning, come home to you every evening. It is time, Martin. Martin thought about his small apartment, the place he had lived for 7 years. It was not much, but it was his, the first place he had ever had on his own. Leaving it felt like leaving behind a part of himself. But he also knew Ava was right. It was time to stop living in 2 separate worlds and create one shared life. Okay, he said. Yes, let us do it. Ava's face lit up with a smile so bright it made Martin's chest ache. Really? She asked. Really, he confirmed. They spent the next few weeks packing up Martin's apartment, sorting through his belongings, deciding what to keep and what to donate. It was bittersweet, saying goodbye to that small space, but also exciting, the beginning of a new chapter. When Martin finally handed his keys back to the landlady, he felt lighter, freer. Living with Ava was an adjustment. Her apartment was so different from what he was used to, so much space, so much luxury. But they made it work, carving out spaces for Martin's things, his tools in a corner of the storage room, his books on a shelf in the living room, his coffee maker in the kitchen next to Eva's expensive espresso machine. They learned each other's habits and rhythms, how Eva was grumpy in the mornings until she had her coffee, how Martin liked to work on mechanical projects on weekend afternoons, how they both enjoyed quiet evenings reading or watching old movies. They had their disagreements, of course, moments when their different backgrounds and expectations clashed. Eva sometimes forgot that Martin could not just take time off work whenever she had a free day, that his job had constraints and responsibilities just like hers. Martin sometimes felt overwhelmed by Eva's world, the business dinners and social obligations that came with being her partner, but they talked through it, compromised, found ways to accommodate each other. One evening in late June, they were sitting on the balcony of Eva's apartment, watching the sun set over the city. Eva was quiet, more thoughtful than usual, and Martin could tell something was on her mind. "What are you thinking about?" he asked. "Us," Eva said. "Where we are going." Martin felt a flutter of nervousness. "Where do you think we are going?" "I think we are building a life. Together," Eva said. "A real life, not just a relationship. And I want you to know that I am committed to that. To us. To making this work no matter what challenges come our way." Martin reached over and took her hand. "I am committed too," he said. "I know the past few months have been difficult, but I have never doubted that you are the person I want to be with." Eva turned to look at him, and there were tears in her eyes. "I love you, Martin Svoboda," she said. "I love you more than I thought I could love anyone." "I love you too," Martin said. They kissed as the sun disappeared below the horizon, the city lights beginning to twinkle in the gathering darkness. Martin felt a sense of peace settle over him, a certainty that despite all the complications and challenges, they had found something real and lasting. In July, Eva made a decision that surprised everyone, including Martin. She announced that she was stepping back from the day-to-day operations of Novacek Holdings, appointing Philip as the new chief operating officer, while she remained as chairman of the board. It meant she would still have oversight and make major strategic decisions, but she would not be consumed by the constant demands of running the company. "I spent my whole life building this company," Eva told Martin when she explained her decision. "But I do not want to spend the rest of my life being consumed by it. I want time for us, for the life we are creating. I want to be present, not always distracted by the next crisis or the next meeting." "Are you sure?" Martin asked. "You love your work." "I do," Eva said. "But I love you more. And I am learning that there is more to life than just work. That success is not just measured in profits and market share. True success is having someone to share your life with, having time to enjoy the things that really matter." Martin was deeply moved by her words and her actions. He knew what the company meant to Eva, how much she had sacrificed to build it. For her to step back, even partially, was a profound statement of her priorities. The summer passed in a haze of happiness. Martin and Eva settled into their shared life, finding joy in simple things like cooking dinner together or taking evening walks through the city. They visited Martin's parents more often, and his mother welcomed Eva like a daughter, the two women forming a bond that delighted Martin. In August, on a warm evening with stars visible despite the city lights, Martin made a decision. He took Eva to the park where they had first walked together, back when they were just getting to know each other, when everything was new and uncertain. They sat on a bench overlooking the river, and Martin felt his heart pounding in his chest. "Eva," he said, taking her hand, "this past year with you has been the most incredible year of my life. You have challenged me, supported me, loved me in ways I never expected. You have shown me that love is not always easy, but it is always worth fighting for." Eva looked at him, her eyes wide, as if she sensed what was coming. Martin slid off the bench and knelt on one knee, pulling a small box from his pocket. He had saved for months to buy the ring. A simple band with a single diamond, nothing extravagant, but chosen with care. "Eva Novakova," he said, his voice shaking slightly. "Will you marry me?" Eva's hands flew to her mouth, tears streaming down her face. "Yes," she said, her voice breaking. "Yes, yes, 1,000 times yes." Martin slipped the ring onto her finger, and she pulled him up into a fierce embrace, both of them laughing and crying at the same time. People walking past smiled at them, recognizing the moment for what it was. They stayed in the park for hours, talking about the future, making plans, dreaming together. Martin felt a completeness he had never experienced before, a sense that all the struggles and challenges had been leading to this moment, this choice to commit fully to each other. They were married in September, exactly 1 year after that first night on the dark country road, when Martin had stopped to help a stranger with a broken-down car. The wedding was small and intimate, held at a countryside inn near Martin's parents' farm. Eva wore a simple white dress. Martin wore a suit that his father had helped him pick out, and they exchanged vows in front of 40 people who loved them, family and close friends who had watched their relationship survive every challenge thrown at it. Martin's mother cried throughout the entire ceremony, tears of joy that her son had found someone who made him truly happy. Eva's parents, who had flown in from the small town where Eva had grown up, embraced Martin like he was already family. Thomas stood as Martin's best man, and Philip stood up for Eva, the 4 of them representing the 2 worlds that had come together. During the ceremony, as Martin looked into Eva's eyes and spoke his vows, he thought about the journey that had brought them to this moment. All the complications, all the misunderstandings, all the times they could have given up but chose to keep fighting instead. He thought about trust and honesty, and the courage it took to be vulnerable with another person. He thought about how love was not always easy or simple, but it was always worth it. Eva's vows echoed his thoughts. She spoke about meeting Martin on that dark road, about how one act of kindness had changed her entire life. She talked about learning to balance ambition with love, success with connection, power with vulnerability. She promised to choose him every day, to build a life together that honored both of their dreams, to never let work or responsibility come before their relationship. The reception was joyful, filled with laughter and music and dancing. Martin danced with his mother, with Eva, with his new mother-in-law. He watched Eva laugh with his father, saw how comfortable she was with his family, how much they had come to love her. Karel gave a toast about how sometimes the best things in life come from unexpected places, from stopping to help a stranger, from taking a chance on someone different from yourself. Philip gave a toast about Eva's transformation over the past year, about how love had softened her edges without diminishing her strength, about how Martin had brought out a side of her that Philip had never seen in all their years of working together. As the evening wound down and guests began to leave, Martin and Eva stood outside the inn, looking up at the stars. The same stars that had been overhead that first night, though everything else had changed. "We did it," Eva said softly, leaning against Martin. "We built something real." "Yes," Martin said, wrapping his arms around her. "We did." They spent their honeymoon driving through the countryside, staying at small inns and exploring villages, the same kind of simple journey that Martin's old car could handle. Ava had suggested flying somewhere exotic, Paris or Rome or the Greek islands, but Martin had asked for this instead, and Ava had agreed immediately. She seemed to relish the simplicity of it, the lack of schedules and obligations, the freedom to just be together without any demands on their time. When they returned to Prague 2 weeks later, they came back to a life that felt more settled, more certain. Martin went back to work at the shop, and though some people still whispered about his relationship with Ava, it had become old news, accepted rather than scandalous. He continued to do what he did best, fixing cars with skill and pride, taking satisfaction in work well done. Ava returned to her role as chairman, focused on long-term strategy rather than daily operations. She found that she enjoyed this new balance, having time to think and plan without being consumed by constant crisis. She also started mentoring young women in business, sharing the lessons she had learned about balancing career and personal life, about the importance of building real relationships alongside professional success. 3 months after the wedding, Eva came home from a board meeting with news. Martin was in the kitchen, preparing dinner, when she walked in with a strange expression on her face. "What is wrong?" he asked, immediately concerned. "Nothing is wrong," Eva said. "Actually, something is very right." She handed him a small white stick, and it took Martin a moment to recognize what it was. A pregnancy test, with 2 clear lines. "We are going to have a baby," Ava said, her voice filled with wonder. Martin set down the knife he had been holding, afraid he might drop it. He looked at Eva, at the joy and fear and excitement all mixed together in her expression, and he felt tears spring to his eyes. "A baby," he repeated. Eva nodded. "I know we did not plan this," she said. "I know it is fast, and there is so much we need to figure out. But Martin, I am so happy." Martin crossed the kitchen and pulled her into his arms. "I am happy too," he said. "Terrified, but happy." They laughed, together, holding each other in the kitchen of their shared apartment, contemplating this new chapter that was beginning. Over the coming months, as Eva's pregnancy progressed, they prepared for parenthood together. They converted one of the spare rooms into a nursery, painting walls and assembling furniture. Martin read every book about babies he could find, determined to be the best father possible. Ava slowed down even more at work, recognizing that soon she would have someone else depending on her, someone more important than any business deal or corporate strategy. Martin's parents were overjoyed at the news of a grandchild, and they visited more often, Martin's mother bringing hand-knitted blankets and offering advice. Ava's parents came to stay for a month, helping to prepare, sharing their own stories of parenthood. The 2 families, so different in background and lifestyle, found common ground in their love for Martin and Ava and their excitement for the baby. In late spring, almost 2 years after that first meeting on the dark road, Ava gave birth to a daughter. They named her Anna, after Martin's grandmother. When Martin held his daughter for the first time, looking down at her tiny, perfect face, he felt overwhelmed by love and responsibility and gratitude. Ava, exhausted but radiant, watched them together. "She is beautiful," Martin whispered. "Like her mother," Ava said with a tired smile. Martin sat beside the hospital bed, cradling Anna, and thought about how much his life had changed. 2 years ago, he had been alone, going through the motions, not really living so much as existing. And then he had stopped for a stranger on a dark road, made a choice to help someone who needed it, and that one simple act of kindness had transformed everything. Life was strange that way, Martin thought. You never knew which moments would turn out to be significant, which choices would alter your entire trajectory. If he had driven past Eva that night, if he had been too tired or too rushed or too indifferent to stop, none of this would have happened. He would still be alone, still trapped in his narrow existence. But he had stopped. He had chosen kindness, and kindness had led to connection, and connection had led to love, and love had led to this, to a family, to a future full of possibility. As if reading his thoughts, Eva reached out and touched his hand. "Thank you," she said. "For what?" Martin asked. "For stopping that night," Eva said. "For seeing me as just a person who needed help, not as a boss or an executive or anything else. For giving me a chance to be myself." "Thank you for trusting me," Martin said. "Even when I gave you reasons not to. Even when things were hard." They sat together in the quiet hospital room, their daughter sleeping peacefully in Martin's arms, and Martin felt a sense of contentment that ran deeper than happiness. This was what mattered, he thought. Not success or status or money or power. Just this, just love and family and the quiet joy of being with people who knew you fully and loved you anyway. In the years that followed, life continued to unfold in ways both expected and surprising. Martin eventually left the shop and opened his own small garage, specializing in restoration work that allowed him to use his skills in more creative ways. Eva continued to chair the board of Novacek Holdings, but spent most of her time with Anna, and eventually with Anna's younger brother, born 2 years later. They raised their children in the apartment that had once seemed too large for one person, but now felt just right for a family. They taught Anna and her brother about both worlds they came from, about the dignity of working with your hands and the responsibility that comes with privilege. They spent weekends at Martin's parents' farm, teaching the children about the land and animals and simple living. They took family trips to places both exotic and ordinary, creating memories together. Martin and Eva continued to grow together, learning and changing, facing challenges as partners. There were difficult times, moments when old insecurities surfaced, or when the demands of life felt overwhelming. But they had learned how to weather those storms, how to communicate honestly, how to choose each other over and over again. Sometimes on quiet evenings when the children were asleep, Martin and Eva would sit together and talk about that first night, about the broken-down car and the dark road and the stranger who had stopped to help. They marveled at how much had come from that single moment, how one choice had rippled out to create an entire life. And Martin would think about all the people out there, driving past strangers in need, too busy or too scared or too indifferent to stop. He would think about all the connections that never happened, all the love stories that never began, all because someone chose not to take a chance. He hoped that his story, if people heard it, might inspire them to stop next time, to help, to be kind, to take a risk on someone unexpected. Because you never knew when a simple act of kindness might change everything. You never knew when the person you helped might turn out to be the love of your life. And even if they were not, even if stopping led to nothing more than helping someone in need, was that not reason enough? Martin believed it was. He believed that we were all just travelers on this road together, and the best we could do was help each other along the way, one kind act at a time. And sometimes, if we were very lucky, those acts of kindness would lead us home.